Hi, I'm Leah Leaves, and I help people who have ADHD and who know they've got what it takes, but just find that their mind just has it in for them, I guess. And I help you to get your mind working with you rather than against you so that you can do whatever it is that you want to do. And I'm here today in the fourth of my series of 12 myths about adult ADHD for Christmas 2019. And today's myth is that ADHD is just a result of bad parenting. Um, and as I've said in one of the earlier videos, actually ADHD is really a proven condition. There's MRI evidence that shows that there are actual differences within the brain of a person with ADHD as opposed to someone who doesn't have ADHD. And of course, those differences are present no matter what the environment that the person grows up in is. So why do people have this impression that ADHD might be down to bad parenting? Well, the simple thing is that when somebody has ADHD, there are several differences that make it much harder to conform to societal expectations. Expectations of parents, expectations of teachers, expectations of people in a restaurant and cinema, whatever it might be. And so, one of the differences in the brain of somebody who has ADHD is that there is actually a difference in the structure. So, some of the parts of the brain that are responsible for what's called executive function aren't actually as strong as they are in people with ADHD, as well developed. So, executive function really is, the brain kind of managing itself. So, I often liken it to a conductor or a teacher teaching a class, and the executive function of the brain kind of keeps all of the other parts of the brain in check. So that means that it keeps them doing what they need to do. It keeps them focusing on what's important rather than what's not important, and also makes sure that things kind of move in a steady process from one stage to the other. So, for instance, if you are solving a complex maths problem, or you're doing a bit of research on what washing machine you might need, whatever it might be, there's usually a sequence of steps that you need to go through. So the executive function is all about kind of holding that together. And the other thing that's really important to know here is that the ADHD brain is an interest-based brain rather than a priority-based brain. So where there are things that are really, really interesting and appealing, and there are things that are less appealing and interesting, but actually very important, the ADHD brain will struggle to pull the attention away from the less important but very interesting thing and bring it onto the very important thing that's less interesting. And so there's a lack of prioritizing, there's a lack of being able to control impulse. And so what happens to children with ADHD in particular, but actually adults too, is it's much harder to control those impulses. Now, it's not impossible necessarily, but often for somebody with ADHD, the response, whether that's a turning of attention or something that's said or an emotional reaction, often happens absolutely for them at the same time it happens for everybody else. There's no warning, there's nothing kind of limiting it, holding it back. And so that means that within the confines of a classroom, then somebody who's struggling to sit still, who's struggling not to shout out when they're supposed to be quiet, who's struggling to hold interest on what the teacher's saying to them and actually wandering off into daydreams and noticing interesting things happening outside the window. And so it's very easy for that child to be labelled as naughty, as disruptive. And what tends to happen then is that the child's self-esteem starts to suffer, because actually you think of a little child who's not able to do the same as the other children. It's not able, despite wanting to listen to the teacher, to sit still, to do what their mum or dad says. And they find themselves just kind of, doing stuff and knowing about it when it's already happened rather than making a decision to do it. Then actually what happens when they don't realise that other people are different, other people are having a different experience, then the only way to deal with that is to turn inwards on yourself and kind of say, well, I must be bad, I must be wrong, I must be defective in some way. And once people start to think that, then there tends to be either a shutdown, they stop trying, they're just like, fine, that's just not who I am, I can't do this, or go another way, kind of become a people pleaser. There are other reactions, of course, that could happen, but the point I'm making is this all kind of rolls forward and makes an impression to those who don't know, because don't forget, those looking from the outside, they don't know any more than that child, do they? They don't know that this child has less of a structure in the brain or less of a function in the brain that, child B has, and therefore the immediate conclusion to come to is that they are naughty, and the follow-on conclusion for that is that there's some bad parenting going on. So I hope that makes sense. ADHD occurs in all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of families. But actually, there's a strong genetic component which suggests that in all likelihood, actually, if a child has ADHD, then probably some of their close family members do too. So whether that's one of their parents or both of their parents, or siblings. But there's a chance actually that there are difficulties from that point of view then. So somebody who's struggling to kind of hold it all together as an adult, as a parent, then trying to help manage a child who's also trying to hold it together and doing their best despite a lot of, I was going to say detriment, and that's not really the word I want. Despite a lot of difficulties, I suppose, a lot of extra work, because actually it's exhausting, pulling in your mental faculties, your intentional brain. So I don't know if any of you've learned to drive before, but when you first start learning to drive, it's really difficult because you're actually literally having to say, right, I want to turn right, so what do I need to do? I need to come to the junction, I need to flick my indicator, I need to check my mirror, I need to look, all these things. I feel like maybe I've probably missed something there. I can drive, honest. And then very consciously turn the wheel, and everything's being done consciously. Over time, when you become better at driving, a lot of it gets automated, and once that's automated, it becomes easier because you're doing much less with your conscious mind, and then you can talk to people, you can listen to the radio, you can have thought process while you're driving. And that's the bit that becomes difficult for people with ADHD, not because necessarily of driving, but actually this kind of automation of processes, this kind of unconscious performance of tasks, of managing impulses, actually isn't really there. So a lot of it has to happen. When I say it's not really there, I better be careful how I phrase things. It's not that it's not really there, it's just not as good in somebody or as effective in somebody that has ADHD. So there's a lot more conscious effort that needs to go in, which is exhausting, and it's not possible to do all the time. So as soon as something's distracting, as soon as life becomes stressful or different in some way, then that's such a big burden that everything tends to fall apart. Anyway, I've kind of gone off track a little bit, but I hope that's been useful to you. I just wanted to let you know, if you don't know already, that if you head on over to Instagram, and I should have a little link here below for you to see how to find me on Instagram. I'm actually running a competition at the moment, so if you enter before the 6th of January, and it's just a kind of like and share kind of thing, then you will potentially win a free session with me. So that's an assessment consultation if you haven't worked with me before, or if you have worked with me before, it's your choice of session. And an assessment consultation is the foundation of working with me. So whether you win it or whether you decide to book it separately on the website, then we will meet probably over video call, unless you're local to me in Plymouth, and I'll find out all the information from you that I need to in order to work out how best to help you, and we'll create a plan. You'll have ample time to ask any questions that you want to, and if I think we can work together, I'll make a plan and with you, and I'll explain to you exactly what the reasons are behind that plan, so that if this is something that feels right to you, then we can go ahead and both knowing what the plan would be. If you're not lucky enough to get it free through the competition, it is still covered by a money back guarantee, which means that if either one of us, me or you, decide that working together isn't right, then actually we just need to say so. You need just to let me know if it's you that's decided it, and you get that session for free. So if you don't want to wait for the competition, then do visit my website at leahleaves.com and book a slot on the online system that works for you. Anyhow, I've been plenty long enough, so have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow for myth number 5. Take care.